You're listening to The Journey with Ellie and Erin. Join us every week as we talk about all the things woo, wise and wonderful with our guests and have the bigger, braver, bolder conversations that women should be having so that we can be the change the world needs. Welcome back to The Journey with Ellie and Erin. And this week it is, again, just Ellie and Erin. I'm Erin, as always, and she is Ellie. Looking fantastic this morning, Ellie. Nice to see your face. It has been far too freaking long. Welcome, friend. How are you going?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you. It has been a long time since we've actually caught up. Well, maybe like 4 days or something, which is a long time in our world.
Basically 4 months. Yep.
Yeah. The same as. But my parents arrived from the UK on Monday. So I have been on duty being a daughter and reconnecting. And it's been absolutely incredible. And it's amazing how when you reconnect with those people who you have soul connections with, how it just doesn't feel like I haven't seen them for nearly 3 years in like physical form. I've seen them on FaceTime and stuff like that, but it just feels normal. It's like they hang out here all the time. So it's been really cool. And what was particularly lovely was seeing Phoebe connect with them. So my youngest, who last time they were over would have been about 6 months old. So as Dad very kindly called her, she was just a blob last time they were here. And now she's like this whole little person who has just got an instant connection with them. And that is an absolute joy to witness and see. And yeah, it's super cool to see that connection there. And yeah, and Emily's loving having them about. And yeah, it's been a really nice week, but I have missed hanging out with you, my friend.
I have missed hanging out with you too. Well, this week we are all about you, aren't we?
Ooh,
so
yeah.
I will be interviewing, I use that as a very loose term, interviewing my esteemed colleague, my very, very talented and gifted business partner, and my incredibly just gorgeous friend, Ellie Bell, who, Ellie, when you think about a bio, you think about all the things that you do in the world. For me, you are less about those things and you're more about who you are at the core. When I think about you, I think about someone who is really convicted in her relationships, always shows up for the people who matter, and does so in a way that is compassionate and loving and nurturing and all of those things. You are someone who has a deep sense of loyalty and loving connection with your sisters, with your parents, as you just mentioned, and with the people who have influenced your life. I can honestly say that you will have influenced theirs immeasurably as well. You are, well, you think you're funny. You're silly. You're fun. You're kind. You're intelligent. You're articulate. You're all of those things. But beyond anything else, you're just you. And you're authentic and you're real and you know your truth and you're learning to share it in an unapologetic way. And it is just a real gift to know you and to be doing life with you, and to do business with you as well is a genuine pleasure and privilege. So I'm excited for this chat because I hope the world gets to see glimpses of what I get to see on a regular basis. But also because I'm going to put you under the pump and ask you some really uncomfortable questions.
You're really looking forward to it. I'm slightly terrified.
Yeah, you should be.
Okay.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, Ellie, you're a mother and a daughter and a wife and a friend and a business partner and all the things. You have far more hats than any one person should have to wear, but you wear them well. But beyond all of those things, you're a powerful woman in your own right. And like, how did you get to that point?
That's a big question to start with. So thanks for that.
Yeah, they get better.
It's a really good question, and I think it's absolutely still the journey that I'm on. The difference in who I am today to who I was 10 years ago is huge. And then if I look back, like that gain is, and then sort of 20 years even bigger. And that a lot of that comes with just age. Like, I do believe as we get older, we become less worried about the little things, and we become more focused on who we are, and we're a bit braver about who we are and what we stand for. And we don't, tolerate the bullshit we probably did in our 20s as much as we do in our 40s. So I think age is definitely a part of it. That said, the journey that I've been on over the past sort of 12, 13 years, probably since I hit 30, has been quite meandering, but has also there's been a lot of change in the way that I think, a lot of change in the way that I show up, and a lot of fundamental change in who I am. There really has been a remembering of where I've come from, and being brave. If I think back to my 20s, I never felt like I fitted into my skin. I remember just being in places and being okay and having a nice time and having good friends and all of that, but I never felt like it was really me. It always felt something it's a little bit like when you wear a shoe slightly too small or something. It just didn't quite fit, but I never quite knew why it was. And looking back at that now, I can see how I definitely got through that. And that was spending a lot more time in pubs drinking than I is probably wise, partying and all of that sort of stuff, and just doing anything I could to avoid actually feeling. If I'm completely honest, being able to manage my emotions was something that I always struggled with, because I always felt really big and not terribly accepted. And that wasn't that I was told they were bad. It's just I don't think people necessarily knew how to deal with them when I was growing up and as a teenager. I remember just being really, they would just explode out of me, and I just didn't know how to control them and how to manage them and all of those things. And I remember in my, very early 30s, I'd spent some time chatting with this amazing woman who I've talked about before, who just changed everything for me. She really was the light that sort of redirected my path. And she lent me this book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, and I may have talked about it before, and if I haven't, it's an incredible book. I always think it's a bit of a shame the name's just sounds a little bit wanky, for want of a better word, but it's actually an incredible book. And it was all about this understanding about your shadow and knowing that, like, our whole self is important. There is good, and there are bits that we deem to be bad because society tells us, and we get convinced of these things as kids, and we don't know how to deal with those, so we just push them down and hope that they won't come out. But the problem is, when they do, they come out in extremes, so they're not managed, they're not understood, they're not helpful. And yet all of those parts of us are part of who we are, and we need to kind of accept them. So I think, going back to your question, how have I got to here? It's been a journey of understanding all of the parts of me, and I'm still finding new bits and uncovering more and going deeper into some of those spaces, but it's finding those and it's accepting them. It's accepting that they are all part of me, and they all have their uses, even the ones that might seem not particularly helpful on occasions. Actually, when you're under the pump and you need it, you know that you've got these strengths to draw on. So yeah, I think that's probably part of the way I've got here, is by just learning that we all have so many layers to us, and the more we can bring them to the surface and explore them and look at them with a gentle curiosity, isn't that interesting, rather than judgment, it allows us to embrace them, and then we just become more of who we are at our core. We stop having to be led by our ego. We stop having to be led by validation from others. We start to be able to really see that what people project to us is about them and not about us, and we get to choose. Like, in every moment we get to choose how we show up, how we respond, how we think, how we connect with people. And what a gift. Like, that means that I get to, as a control freak, which I am a semi-reformed, like, that's amazing. That's music to my ears. I get to have that control, but it's a different type of control. It's a deep connection to your inner soul that allows you to just be you without having to worry about all of the things that you spend your teens and 20s and some of your 30s thinking about. So I don't know if that even vaguely answered your question, but those are my thoughts.
Well, I mean, it allowed your soapbox to come out early, which was nice.
Did, didn't it? I thought I tucked it away.
It's never fully away, let's be fair. But I think the thing that comes up for me there is just how much of a Scorpio you are in that respect, like the need to know and the need to understand and that researchy stuff, right? Like that. It's interesting that you have been able to apply that so openly to your own self. I think for a lot of us, that's a deeply uncomfortable thing that often we turn away from. And my experience of you is that you're much more inclined to want to go down those paths than others might be. The other thing that came up for me, though, while you were talking about that, and the fact that, you have changed a lot in the last 20, 25 years, which, we all do, is I know for a fact that you still maintain a significant number of relationships with people who you shared time, space, and energy with as a younger person, as a teenager, as a young adult. How do you do that when you have changed how you see yourself so much? Like, how do you, I know there's a sense of loyalty to a degree around some of that stuff, but I mean, these people, they're fortunate to know you first and foremost, but the Ellie that they grew to love as young people and the Ellie that they know now are quite different people, I think, in a lot of fundamental ways. And then not so different in others.
I think that's a really interesting question. And, I think of the connections that I still have back in the UK. And there are some people that, I could not speak to for 10 years. And the moment that we catch up, it's exactly the same. And I would say that those people probably always knew the real me underneath it all anyway. I mean, it was hidden as much as I possibly could, but they still had they had a connection to it. Because I can see that they are the ones that I'm probably still really connected to, go back sort of much further. The people that I met probably in my 20s, whilst they were fabulous friends, and I'm a big believer in their, friends for a season, for a reason, and all of those things. And there was very much those people, but there are those, I'd call them soul connections that are still there. And I'm much more discerning now about who I spend my time with and where I put my energy. So the people that I still connect with, and, it's not such a great thing to just get rid of your sisters and your parents. Apparently you've got to stay friends with them. So, it's good for Christmas presents and stuff. No, I'm being silly there because that's a whole different conversation. But no, I'm incredibly lucky that my sisters are incredibly, they're best friends as well as siblings. Same with my mum, same with my dad. They're just incredible. And the friends that I still have, there is just a deep connection. And I think they always knew me, but learning to be more particular about who I spend time with and who I connect with has really helped me with my energy and not getting caught up with some of those stories that you tell yourself. And I remember going through stages in life where, you'd have these friends, and if you didn't get a response, or if you texted and didn't hear back, and all those things, you sort of play into these stories and be like, oh, what did I do? Did I say something? Did I upset them? And I would, make it all about me. And I think what I've got now in the friendships is just this deep knowing that they see me. They hold space for me as I hold space for them. And I don't have to pretend. Like you said earlier that I wear lots of hats. I actually wear the same hat, just lots of, for different things. I'm not changing. The person I am, who you hear talking today, is the same person who sits on the school board, who's the same person who does speeches at Toastmasters, who's the same person who sits, in the wine, in having a wine with friends in the garden. I don't change. Whereas I used to feel like I had to be a certain persona in different places, and I had to be a certain person and all of those things. And that got really tiring, and I didn't really know who I was. But now that's so much easier when you can just be the same person in every space. It's great because you don't forget what you're meant to be at any one time. You can just be you. But that's taken time to become braver to do that. And there have been certain experiences in my life that have fast-tracked that and made me really realize that actually, if I'm not true to me, if I'm not authentically me, then I'm actually doing everybody else a disservice as well. Like, forget about how it impacts me. And loyalty and friendship and connection is very much who I am. It's part of those core values. But it just, the realization that actually I've still got to be true. I've got to be my truth in order to serve others. And if I don't do that, I can't. And that's been a real lesson to learn. But now that I can stand a lot more firmly in who I am, it feels like it was a lesson so worth learning. And even though, it's been really hard, and there's been days and nights where it's emotionally drained me. It's, I'm a very emotional person. My star sign has helped me with that. I get my big three are all water signs. So, there is a lot of depth and a lot of emotion here, but having learned that is who I am and that's okay has also helped. So yeah, I think the people that I'm connected with, I'm connected on a deeper level than the people I'm not, I suppose, for want of a better way of describing it. They're people who just got me and I didn't have to pretend. So yeah.
It's interesting because I know loyalty is a really big thing for you, and it's something that we've talked about a lot. But what I admire about you, and the trouble that I've always had with loyalty, is that loyalty can be very blind. And you, even over the course of the time that you and I have known each other, I've seen you use loyalty with more discernment than perhaps you have in the past, and a recognition that actually it has to serve you to maintain loyalty. You don't have to maintain loyalty through obligation. And that I think is a really important lesson that I take away from you in the way that you lead your life. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But the other thing I wanted to ask you about that particular conversation, because I know that you are very close with your parents and very close with your sisters. And I mean, I've met Boo, I haven't met Tor, but I think seeing you with them, there is this like symbiotic kind of thing that happens where you all just kind of become a collective of one person, that bounce off each other. And I guess my question to you, and interestingly, this may serve me quite well moving forward, is how, I mean, you moved from one side of the world to the other. And, we've talked about the origins of that move several times on podcasts and things, but that calling that I'm less interested in the calling to go, and I'm more interested in the knowing that you should stay, if that makes sense. Given that the people who love you and support you unconditionally are on the other side of the world at that point in time that you decide that thing, how did you have the confidence in yourself, in your intuition, in your knowing? How did you get to that point where you could just say, actually, I know that I belong here and this is where I'm going to stay?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to be honest, up until probably relatively recently, I've always been like, oh, it's not forever. It's for as long as it works, type of thing. And I remember saying to Dad,
that's living in New Zealand, right? Not you're married.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, he doesn't get rid of me. Oh no, I've told him he doesn't get rid of me at any stage.
I've got him counselling for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. We've got to fund for that, but it's. I remember saying to Dad before I left, "Don't worry, I'm not going forever. Like, even if I meet somebody, I'm always going to come back because you guys are my family." And he was always like, "Yeah, whatever," type of thing. Just you do what you need to do. If you meet somebody and you need to stay there or you want to stay there, know that we will always support you and all of that stuff. And I think that's one of the things that I'm incredibly, incredibly lucky to have from my parents, is this absolute knowing that whatever I do, God, it makes me feel almost a little bit emotional talking about it, which is not surprising. Whatever I do, they will support me. Like, they absolutely will walk alongside me in whatever choice I make. And I was talking to Dad about it yesterday. Just, he was sort of like, you're all so different, but you're all being really successful and all of that sort of thing. And I just said, we've always known that you were there. And in many ways, I was a pretty gross teenager. I mean, I think, we all are, but
all teenagers gross, yeah.
But I definitely pushed my parents, and I definitely, as I talked about earlier, like those emotions, I just didn't know how to handle them. So the people closest to me got them full throttle. They got it all. There was no holding back or anything like that.
Let's preface that with the fact, though, that you are the eldest. So it was their first time doing it too. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's not all on you. That whole situation is challenging when you're the first one to it. So
completely. And I'm a much more volatile person than either of my parents. My mum can be, but was very much taught not to. She was of the era that, we stay quiet and we do what we're told and all of those. And she was so willing for that not to be the way her daughters were brought up, that we were allowed to be a lot more expressive. But at the same time, I think that posed a lot of challenges as well. But through all of that, like, no matter what I did, I always knew that they loved me and that they supported me. I always knew that. I just had this deep, deep connection and knowing that I could push them and push them and push them, and they would always support me. And that, I think, has made living on the other side of the world from the people that I love so much easier, because I know that they support me. I know that they love me. I know that there's connections. The fantastic thing of, modern technology is I can talk to them every day or not. Like, we get to choose that. They have a lovely relationship with my children. Me and my sisters chat. The three of us will chat together and have a, fabulous conversation, or I'll talk to Tor, or it can literally be a 2-minute, hey, how you doing? Just wanted to see your face. Like, I just know, but I know that they're always there, and I know they're supporting me, just like they know that I'm always supporting them. I read a book to my girls called Invisible String, and it talks about this connection we have to people that we love. And absolutely, I'm connected to them. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. I'm connected to them on a much, much deeper level than, 11,000 miles could ever make difficult. It's just, so when I think about that knowing and making that decision, it was never difficult, because no one's ever made it difficult for me. I've always just been able to do what I felt was right. And I knew that being here, like particularly being in Lincoln, in Christchurch, this just is where I'm meant to be at the moment. There is nowhere else I'm meant to be. I'm very, very happy here. I've got incredible friends. My roots are very much here, and that's awesome. And also, like, the admin of having to get visas for Matt if we went to live in England is just more hassle than I can be bothered with at the moment. So,
don't I know
it? A little bit of that as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think what I love about that, though, is that, if we reflect on the conversation you were having with your dad yesterday, is that he sees each of you as being successful in your own right, doing your own thing. And I get the very distinct impression that it wouldn't matter what you were doing, he would still see it that way. And I think that's probably the key, right? Is that they have raised you to believe that as long as you do what makes you happy, and as long as you do what you love, and that you are kind, compassionate people, that you will have success and that you are successful. And it's a really interesting way to be for them, I imagine, given that they were likely raised with a very different mindset, and they grew up in a society and parented in a society that didn't necessarily see success that way.
Yeah, they are. They're incredible people. They're incredible people. The kindness. I always remember thinking before I met Matt, and dating all these sort of relatively average people throughout my teens and 20s.
Men, let's be clear.
30s,
men.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. The men, they were pretty average. And I remember thinking, I want to marry someone who's quite like my dad, I always remember, he's going to wear a suit to work. I mean, like, why that matters, God only knows. And he's going to have a professional job. You know, he's going to be, you know, a lawyer or an accountant or all of these. And I had this really distinct, like, type of man that I thought, you know, I wanted to marry. And then, you know, I've sort of married the opposite of that, you know, former sportsman, wears a tracksuit all the time. Like, I've just about get him into a suit every now and then, and he does look very handsome when I do. But, you know, he's passionate about his sport. He's done all of these incredible things. But actually, when I reflect on, you know, that wanting to meet someone like my dad, the things that Matt is like my dad is he's just got this incredible kindness. Like, he's just the most kind, beautiful human who just grounds me and just makes me know that he's the pillar that I get to be me around. Like, I can just be me, and he just loves me for me. And that's kind of like my dad. And I just think, isn't that interesting that, you know, I was on the right path with the, you know, find someone who's a bit like your dad to marry. Just, I was looking in the wrong places. I wasn't valuing, I suppose, what is actually important. And that's the, you know, the heart of the person. And I think that's something that I've learned as I've got older. Actually, that's the important stuff. It's not what they do, and it's not, you know, what they've done in the world. It's actually, how do they show up, and how do they really reflect their values back into the world. And that's something that's just incredibly important. And having two daughters, it's really important that we have a relationship that encourages that sort of thing as well. You know, I want them to look at us and see us being, you know, honest and raw with each other when we need to be, but knowing that we absolutely have each other's back, that we will support each other. And, you know, there are two things that I always remember from my parents. You know, their relationship is just, you know, they've been together 45 years. They're absolutely best friends. They have the most fun together. They just have this incredible relationship. And I always remember thinking, you know, I really want that. I remember saying to Mum once, oh, you know, it's all right for you. You've got this perfect relationship with, you know, you and Dad are just so happy and blah, you know, being a sort of stroppy, you know, 18 or 19-year-old about some shit I can't remember. Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, I should show you more of that. And she just said, it hasn't always been easy. We've worked bloody hard at it. And I think that's what I'm starting to learn. Is she said, but it's always easy. I had to make a decision. Is it easier with him or without him? And it was always easier with him. And I think that was a really interesting moment of reflection. And now, you know, marriages are hard. Like, you know, particularly, Matt and I grew up on different sides of the world. We have completely different upbringings. We have different connections with our, you know, relations and all of that sort of stuff. And it's really difficult sometimes in navigating those things. And it's kind of nuts that we think it should be easy, because it's really hard, and you have children and they don't sleep, and you're tired, and you're, you know, juggling finances, and you're, you know, like, we're busy and all of those things. And it's really difficult. And I always remember those words from Mum, you know, deciding it's easier with him. And I just think that is something that I always have in the back of my mind, is actually, you know what, we do have to work at it. We have to work at it if we want this to last, because actually good things deserve that. Like, that's what it deserves. That's my commitment to my relationship. So that was one of the things that they really taught me. And the other thing was, you know, I was really lucky to be privately educated throughout my schooling. And I always remember because it was tight, you know, it was hard. They didn't have the money to do it a lot of the time. And, you know, I always remember Mum talking about, you know, Mr. Jenkins, the bursar, and she used to, you know, pop in and be like, oh, you know, I'll settle up, you know, this term's in a couple of weeks. And it was always hard. But they always said to me, the one thing we knew we could give you and pay for was a good education. And that's always something that's kind of stuck with me as well. So those are kind of like the two nuggets of the words of wisdom that I take forward now with my children, and really, you know, encourage that opportunity to grow and learn as individuals, but then to also just show them that actually, you know, if things are hard, that's okay. You've just got to keep working at it. And that's part of the joy, because then you overcome it, and then you get to, you know, look down the mountain and see what you've achieved. So yeah, no, I feel very, very privileged, and it's a real joy at the moment reconnecting with them, and, you know, just being in their energy, because they're pretty cool humans. Mum's just mad as a box of frogs as well, which is always entertaining. It's slightly worrying when I turned up at school.
Does not fall far from the tree.
I turned up at school and met a couple of the other mums and introduced Mum, and they're like, "Oh, we can see the connection." I was like, "Hang on a minute, I've been trying really hard not to become my mother, but it turns out that I am failing miserably at that." I'm proud to.
Yeah, it can't be a bad thing, right? Stepping away from that conversation. I wanted to touch on your belief system around your work. And I know you have lots of different things that you do in work. You speak to, leadership. You are involved in governance. You do, things with sport, things with education, things with corporate organizations. But I want to speak to you about the work that is your soul work, that breaking down the patriarchy.
I just put my soapbox away. Did you want me to get it back out again?
No, I mean, I think we already have glimpses in the conversation already around where that comes from. I think, quite clearly your father wasn't a typical middle-class white man. And, raising 3 daughters, he probably didn't have much choice in that, if we're fair. But like you, I think, came to this lifetime with the knowing that the patriarchy doesn't serve us. And listening to you talk about marriage and how, it is something you have to work at, and it's not always easy, and those sorts of things, I find really interesting because, the patriarchy used to require that women were married to someone who would raise their station in life, as opposed to marrying for love or, some sort of form of desire. And I guess I want to know what your personal journey has been with that particular thread in your life, that journey around really knowing that actually you are here on some level to influence the people around you, whether that's 5 people or 5 million people, to see that there is a better way of being for us as people, and that there is a need to step away from the constructs we were born into, so that we leave a more, I'm not sure what the word is that I'm looking for, but the legacy for our children is just better than what we could if we don't do that work.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting question, and something that has probably always been part of who I am. I've probably always just sort of pushed at things that I haven't agreed with, and at various stages it's been, really pushing into sort of a gentle nudge, because for a long time, that societal conditioning that, women need to behave and they need to, do things politely, and we don't shout and we don't scream and we don't do all of those things, definitely, influenced how I showed up. And I think there was a lot of fear about being different and standing up and, being the one to make the changes. But I always knew deep down inside of me that it had to be different. And I think in many ways that came through that, I know what, like, fairness is really important to me, things being fair. And it's something that I remember, even as a child and, having conversations with my dad as a teenager, just like, but that's just not fair. Like, it's not fair that that's happening. And that's always been something that really, in the old days, it would have triggered me. Now it activates me to look at actually, how can I change this? How can I influence this? How can I make this different? Whereas before it would have triggered me and I'd have had to try and, like, be right or find a way to problem solve it, or, you know, I've got really frustrated about it. And that's something that I've definitely in the last 2 or 3 years have become much better at managing myself, is that actually I can see when things start to feel triggering, and know that actually if I'm being triggered, I'm in a wounded energy, which means that I'm not going to respond from a place of love or from a place of personal power or empowerment. I'm going to respond from a place of fear. And that doesn't do anyone any good. And we've witnessed that particularly in the last, 3 years with COVID, that there have been that whole, there's so much division at the moment because people see it's either my opinion. If my opinion is right, then your opinion is wrong. If my opinion is good, yours is bad. And we've become so divided and so unwilling to see other points of view and to be able to listen and consider that actually somebody else's truth has as much as much validity as ours does, because it's from their experience and it's their life. And that's been a huge change in me, being able to no longer need to convince or cajole or, make someone listen or believe what I'm saying is true. It's actually, this is what I know to be true for me. I've tested it, I've worked on it, and I'm incredibly lucky to have you as a very good friend and business partner who's provided me a lot of space to do this, to test what I believe to be true, to explore the things that I believed growing up and see if that's actually what I believe or if it's not. So I've done a lot of developing around those ideas and those concepts, and I'm now pretty comfortable to stand for what I believe and know that actually that's okay for me. There is no single source of truth anywhere in this world. Everybody has a different approach. Everybody has a different view. Everybody's had a different experience. We can't possibly all think and believe the same way. And how boring would it be if we did? So, one of the things that I really, really stand on and hope that if you can take one thing away from, the conversation today, is to be more willing to understand that different doesn't have to be bad. Different is just different. We can all have different opinions and we can still be friends at the end of it. And if we could start to bring that level of consciousness to our day-to-day living, our day-to-day conversations, I just feel like there's an opportunity to heal so many of those wounds that have just become wide open and gaping in the last 2 or 3 years. And that might allow us to start to do some healing in the world, because that's what the world needs. We've been in an extreme, if you look at all of the things that are going on with global warming, climate change, the wars that are going on, the economic situation, the racism, the sexism, there's so much shit out there. When you start to look at it, it can almost become a bit overwhelming. And I just would love for people to just be able to take a breath, ground themselves into who they are, and see what really matters in life. And actually, if we could just treat people with kindness, if we could just treat people with compassion, if we could be understanding, be willing to see their point of view. You don't have to agree with it, but to be willing to see it, I think that just takes away so much of that negative charge. And at the moment, we just need to become a bit more neutral. Let's just neutralize some of this grossness out there so that we can actually then move forward in a more enlightened and conscious way, so that actually, our children are dealing with a different world when they, get to be in their 30s and 40s. They're not just having to deal with the shit that we are and with creating. Actually, we can start to make change, because if we keep expecting the next generation to do it, there won't be a generation to fix it, because it's not going to get done. So we actually have to start living and being different. And that is challenging, because our brains go, oh, but it's not what I know, but I don't know how it's going to work out. And then we go into fear mode and we shut down and we just carry on doing what we've always done. And I think Einstein gets credited with it, but I don't think it was him who actually came up with it. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And yet we seem to be on this, never ending loop of doing the same thing and being like, oh, that's strange. It didn't change. Well, no, we did the same bloody thing we did last time. So, I do believe that there's time for, a rethinking the way we approach a lot of things and being open to doing things differently. But that takes bravery and, courage. And that can be scary and hard sometimes because we don't necessarily know how it's going to work out. So, I can't remember what your question was. So I hope that vaguely answered it.
No, that did answer the question. And the, I guess moving on from that slightly, I know, and I've had probably more glimpses than most, that you are a very, I don't want to use the word woo, spiritual, soulful person, someone who is very connected with, knowing that this is a human experience and that there is other things going on that support that human experience, and it's all part of our growth and all of that good stuff. And for the listener, what would you like? What would you encourage them to explore in that space? Like, what are the things that you have explored that have really made it easier for you to be you, or made it easier for you to share that with the world? Like, and to, because one thing I admire about your journey, whether it's looking back or 20 years ago or looking at most recent, is that ability for you to be able to say, actually, I've got, I kind of roughly know where the next step is because I'm just following the nudge. What would you encourage people to look at around that stuff?
So I spent a really long time grappling with being a woo or spiritual and all of those things, because I very much had in my mind that I probably needed to, have dreadlocks, eat chickpeas, speak very softly, not drink gin, which would have made me sad. And all of these things. So I really struggled to work out how could I be me and spiritual. Like, they felt so different. They felt like, I was going to have to stop being one person to be another person. And I think what the journey in the last, and it has been over the last sort of 10, 12 years has done is slowly made me realize that actually it's one and the same. I am a spiritual being. I have a deep connection to the earth, to the universe, to spirit, all of those things. And that's actually just who I am. I don't have to think about, it's like that, when I talked earlier about having the different hats or having to be different people in different places, that was very much where that idea was like, well, my spiritual self is going to look like this and they're going to do that. But then my work self is going to do this and look like that. And then my friend self is going to, and it was all different. And now it's kind of all just part of me. So, I have crystals everywhere in my house because they bring me joy. They make me happy. I know lots about some of them, nothing about other ones. Sometimes I'll dive in and I'll learn a bit more. And I think that's where that knowledge is really has helped me, just being able to explore what all these different things are. And I think that's what's exciting about being interested in, the fact that we are more than just human beings. We're so much more, that there's so much opportunity to explore that now. It's not like when I first started doing this, you had to really find the off the beaten track crystal shop to find what you were looking for. And you had to go to the special bookshops to get the special books. You couldn't just go into Paper Plus or Waterstones or something like that and go and get the books that you want. Whereas now you can literally go in anywhere and you can pick up the books that you're after. And so it's become more accessible. And I think that's really fun. Like, it means there's so much stuff to learn out there, and it's a smorgasbord. Like, pick what you want. Like, I love crystals. I love oracle cards. I love meditation at certain times. Other times I'm not very good at it. I love writing. Sometimes I don't write at all. Sometimes I write lots, but I'm always trying to do something that is connected, and actually just learning to trust. And the closer I've become to knowing my soul self, I suppose, the easier it's been to be spiritual, because actually that part of me is just a spiritual being. So they've got all the connections and they can do it all. And, don't get me wrong, I fight it sometimes and I'm like, nope, I can't do that. That's absolutely not me. And then other times I completely embrace it. So I think my advice to anyone who's exploring this side or interested or just knows that there's more is just be curious. Just be interested. If something piques your interest, if you're seeing lots of numbers, for example, learn a bit about numerology, learn about angel numbers. Just like, there's so much information on the internet. There's so many incredible books. Just have a look into it. If you notice that you happen to be interested in crystals or, there's lots of fabulous stuff about, witchcraft and all of that stuff, which is just fantastic. And, I've got a nearly 6-year-old who knows she's a witch, and we have these fabulous conversations, and she tells everybody at school that her mummy's a witch. And I get sort of slightly odd looks from people, but I'm like, witch means wise woman. I'm totally taking that I'm a wise woman, and actually just being able to normalize all of those things. So just be open to it, explore it, be interested, because you'll find what is yours. Like, your heart will just know when you find it, and it's joyful when you get there, because it's just a beautiful space to explore. So I think it's been a journey, and I know that that there's stuff coming for me that I don't know.
Yes, I do.
And that makes me feel deeply uncomfortable in many ways, but also really excited. So being open to it, and just, don't get set in that view. Like, don't do what I did, where if I'm going to be spiritual, it's got to be this, and this. You can just have it as part of you. Yeah. Even if it's just wearing a crystal on a necklace, sometimes that's all you need to be able to connect a little bit more. So does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. Like, I think overall, like, what I hope people walk away with from this conversation, and from your journey, and from learning a little bit more about how you are with yourself. I think you are the epitome of a multifaceted woman. Like, if you think about that diamond that is cut in with all these little intricate little cuts so that the light strikes in all these different ways, that's you. And I think that we all have that in us, but often we remain inside the rock, right? And we just don't go looking for that thing, because it's easier to let the light come in and not shine a light back out. And what you do is you shine the light back out, but you shine it out in so many different ways, that it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So on that note, do you have any final thoughts about what you would like to share about your own journey, about who you are, about where you're going, or anything that you think is something you would like to leave the listener with today?
I think be brave. Be brave in showing who you really are. And if that's one thing that I can do, if I can inspire just one other person to be braver so that they can show their authentic self to the world, then I can be very happy about that, because the more authentic we are, the more we are willing to show all of our parts, the good, the bad. I hate describing them like that. The things that are deemed acceptable, the things that aren't. The more that we can know that we are our own unique genius. Like, nobody else can be us. There is no one. You can't be anybody else. You can't look at somebody and be like, I wish I was more like them, because actually you are you. And the sooner you accept that you are you, and that people who don't, like, some people really like me. Erin, you really like me. Bloody awesome. There are some people who can't stand me. And you know what? That's also totally fine, because I know that's about them and not about me. And that's okay. Like, we're not here to appeal to everybody. And if you appeal to everybody, you don't really appeal to anybody. Like, we have to be willing to stand up for who we are, to be who we are, because that draws the people that need us in their life closer to us. And it repels the people that we don't want. Like, why on earth would anyone want to sit and have coffee with someone they don't like? I mean, I'm all for, like, let's just cut the bullshit and, spend time with people that matter. And to those people that do matter, be kind, be compassionate, be caring, come from a place of love. Choose how you respond to things with consciousness, with enlightenment, with awakening. Be be okay with not having the answers. Just know that it's a journey and you're an incredible being. And the sooner you welcome all parts of that being, the more impact, the happier and more fulfilled your life will be. And I can say that because it's from personal experience. But yeah, that's probably my final words.
Well, it's not, because I've got random questions.
Yeah.
You know, I've got random questions to ask you, but yeah, I love that. I love that. Like, I have witnessed in the short time, relatively speaking, that I've known you, I have noticed and admired a real sense of courage rising within you, that you can be exactly who you desire to be and still be loved and still be wanted and still be necessary, and all of the things that we desire as humans, you know, that sense of belonging and that sense of community. We don't really belong or have a community until we are who we are supposed to be and who we are truly. And I think you have shown that. I look at your coven in Lincoln, and I think you have found your people. You have found your people because you're you. And that's something that I think more people need to dive into. So, yeah, if you need inspiration for that, my good friend Ellie here is a wise woman, and someone you should absolutely connect with and talk about that with. But we'll ask the random questions before we wrap up for the day. First question.
Yes.
Which book do you wish you had written? And I know you've read a bucket load of books. This is a big question. Hopefully you've pre-prepared an answer.
Yeah, I was trying to, and then I was like, but I don't know which book. There's so many good books. So I am going to choose a few. The one I mentioned earlier, Dark Side of the Light Chasers, I think the way that Debbie Ford was able to explore and explain the shadow in a way that didn't feel threatening or uncomfortable is incredible. And it's made such an impact on my life that I think it's a great book. I love the books written by Brené Brown, and she's just incredible.
She is your girl amazing. Crush.
She's my total girl crush, and just inspiring. And more recently, probably the reading Gabor Mate's stuff about trauma and how that influences life has just been incredibly enlightening, and I'd love to, explore more of those things. So, but I've probably got about 500 books in my office alone. So to pick just one is very difficult. Just, any book that sparks your interest, take it off the shelf and have a little read. I'm reading Radical Awakening at the moment, which is just resonating so much with me. So again, books, reason and a season. Just keep buying them.
Cool. Okay. Next question.
Yep.
You're inviting 3 people, living or dead, to dinner.
Yeah.
Who are they and why?
Brené Brown, because I think she's amazing, and I just want.
I think you two would probably need to get a room just for the two of you and leave the others.
Well,
dinner by
you say that, but the other person I'm inviting is Pink, who I also just think is incredible. Like, her ability to just say what she thinks, to be like, she's such a rock star. And if I'm ever going to a meeting, or if I'm ever going anywhere that I feel like a little bit nervous about, then I've got a playlist of all of her songs, and Emily's favorite song at the moment is Raise Your Glass, and I love hearing her sing all the words to it, including some of the swear words, which she kind of doesn't say properly, but it's just brilliant. She's just an absolute legend. I think what she stands for, and her willingness to be uncomfortable and sit in the discomfort and do something about it, is just amazing. Third person, really good question. Like, those are my two.
It's the same question we've been asking all season.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I should I'm just looking at my bookcase, just desperately trying to get some inspiration. But
there's probably someone in this room almost that you could invite to dinner. Just saying.
What did you? I thought you were coming anyway. I just had you. You're on the guest list no matter what. So yeah, I didn't think I needed to invite you. I don't normally invite you to stuff when you just turn up.
It takes me a long time to get there. Damn it! Of course, I'm going to show up.
I think probably those two, and then I'd just like to invite all of my friends to, be there as well and talk to them, because I think it would be just we'd have such a
invite
laugh.
the coven as a single person. Why not?
Yeah.
We'll let you have that one. When you sit and face your 90-year-old self, what would you like her to say to you now?
Just keep going. Be brave and keep going. What other people think doesn't matter. Just do you and carry on, because the world needs to hear what you've got to say. Yeah.
Nice.
Just keep going.
All truth. Now, this is your question, so you should have a bloody good answer for it in theory. What is your guilty pleasure?
Home and Away.
You should feel guilty for that. It is shit.
I know. And I bloody love it. Oh, my God. I just absolutely. Yeah. I still, pretty much. Yeah. Fully up to date. I don't know. I just really enjoy it. It is a definite guilty pleasure of just sitting, watching.
Mindless joy.
Watching Home and Away. That and just reading in general. But that's not a guilty pleasure. That's just a pure pleasure. And it's funny, I've been reading lots recently, and Matt, bless him, likes to, go to sleep quite quickly. And now I read a lot more at night. And I used to be really kind and, read on my iPad or something like that, so that he wouldn't, I could switch the light off, and I'm less generous around that at the moment, because all the books are hard books that I'm reading. And he was like, "Oh, haven't you just finished a book?" I said, "Yes. And now I'm starting my next one, darling. Sleep well." Because reading to me is
don't worry about it.
Yeah. Reading is it's such a joy, and brings me a lot of passion, but that's
your
not a
little Scorpio
pleasure.
heart.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But no, watching Home and Away, that is my guilty pleasure. You heard it here.
Yeah, and on that note, we are away now. Thanks, Ellie, for your openness and your honesty and your wisdom and your just incredible heart. One thing that I think everyone walks away with today is that you are an incredible woman who is doing incredible things, and has a story that all of us can resonate with in some way, shape or form, I think. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being mine. And we will be back next week with a guest that we're both looking forward to the conversation around. And we've got some exciting things coming up over the next few weeks. We're going to be having some conversations with our clients so that we can share them with you all. We have a phenomenal list of potential guests for 2023. So we will be working through that over the next little while. If there's anything that you want to hear, anything that you want us to share, anything that you want us to bring that we don't currently, please reach out. We are always open to feedback and suggestions and, all the good stuff. Anything you want to give us that says we're awesome, please share. But as always, this has been The Journey with Ellie and Erin, all about Ellie Bell, my dear, dear friend and incredible business partner. So thanks, Ellie.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week. And see you then.
Soon.